Narluga in 1990, a subsistence hunter in western Greenland shot an animal he could not identify. The skull was unusual enough that it was preserved and eventually transferred to the Natural History Museum of Denmark, where it sat in a storage collection for 28 years before a researcher ran genetic sequencing on it. The result, published in 2019, confirmed a hybrid of a narwhal and a beluga whale, two species that had been diverging separately for approximately 5 million years. The cause begins with a single gene-level compatibility that 5 million years of separate evolution did not eliminate. Narwhals and belugas are the only two living members of the family Monodontidae. Despite their divergence, the chromosomal architecture retained enough structural alignment to permit viable conception and fetal development. The behavioral and geographic barriers that made interbreeding a non-event for millennia were not biological. They were circumstantial, maintained by sea ice patterns that kept the two species in separate seasonal ranges during reproductive windows. When those patterns shift, the barrier shifts with them. The effects recorded in the single confirmed skull are a precise anatomical document of two evolutionary lineages occupying one body without a template for how to do it. The dentition is neither narwhal nor beluga, not the single spiral tusk, not the functional dental array, but a structural compromise that isotope analysis suggests the animal used to develop a feeding strategy belonging to neither parent species. It ate differently than a narwhal. It ate differently than a beluga. It improvised a diet from whatever its hybrid sensory and physical architecture allowed it to access. Whether that strategy was sufficient, and for how long, the skull cannot say. Wholphin, in 1985, a false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin housed at Sea Life Park in Hawaii produced an offspring that marine biologists had not prepared a category for. The facility named her Kakimalu. She is still alive. She has herself produced offspring with a bottlenose dolphin, a second-generation hybrid, and genetic sampling of wild cetacean populations off the Hawaiian coast has since confirmed that the captive birth was not an isolated event. The ocean had already been producing wholphins without documentation. The cause is a chromosomal match concealed beneath a taxonomic gap. False killer whales, which are not whales but large oceanic dolphins, carry 44 chromosomes. Bottlenose dolphins carry 44 chromosomes. The number alone does not guarantee compatibility, but the structural alignment across that count is sufficient for full gestation and viable development, despite 5 million years of divergent evolution. The behavioral cause compounds the genetic one. False killer whales form multi-decade social bonds and travel in mixed species associations with bottlenose dolphins in open ocean. The proximity is continuous. The chromosomal barrier is lower than the taxonomy implies. When both conditions are present simultaneously, the outcome is documented and repeating. The effects in confirmed wholphin individuals carry a specific implication for how the category species functions as a scientific tool. Every measurable feature of the wholphin tooth count, body length, coloring, behavioral profile, lands in a band between the two parent species without defaulting to either. The animal is not a blend. It is a third configuration that neither parent's genome contains the instructions to produce in isolation. Kakimalu's offspring extended that configuration into a second generation. Wild population sampling suggests it is extending further still, in water covering millions of square kilometers that genetic researchers have sampled at a fraction of 1%. What the wholphin population in the Pacific actually looks like is a question the available data is not equipped to answer. Zebroid in 1868, Charles Darwin described the zebroid, a hybrid of a zebra with a horse or donkey, in the variation of animals and plants under domestication. He noted the striped coat. He noted the sterility. He noted the behavioral intractability. Every observation Darwin recorded in 1868 applies without revision to every zebroid produced in the 157 years since. The experiment has not changed. The outcome has not changed. The production has not stopped. The cause is a chromosomal mismatch so structurally significant that it was identifiable before modern genetics existed to measure it. Zebras carry between 32 and 46 chromosomes depending on species. Horses carry 6. Donkeys carry 62. The gap is large enough to prevent viable gamete production in the offspring. universal sterility across every combination documented, but not large enough to prevent conception and fetal development in the first place. The Zebroid occupies a precise biological band, too compatible to be impossible, too incompatible to be sustainable. Every generation begins from a zebra parent that has not been domesticated, because the offspring cannot carry the domestication forward. The behavioral architecture resets to open savanna prey species with every individual. The effects accumulate in a direction that has never varied. Zebroids are physically capable of work that motivated their production in the first place. Disease resistance, stamina, load-bearing capacity in terrain that exhausts horses. They are behaviorally incapable of being reliably directed toward that work. The zebra's flight response, herd panic behavior, and intolerance of physical restraint, all shaped by millions of years of predator pressure on open African savanna, are inherited fully and expressed in an animal that has never seen a predator and has no functional use for any of it. At scale, the Zebroid is a 157-year empirical record of a breeding decision that produces identical results with each iteration and continues because the visual appeal of the outcome has proven more durable than the evidence that the functional goal cannot be achieved. No regulatory body has moved to restrict it. No industry organization has formally documented the failure rate. The experiment continues because nothing requires it to stop. Grolar Bear in April 2006. A hunter in the Northwest Territories of Canada shot a bear with white fur, brown patches, a dished grizzly face, and polar bear claws. DNA testing confirmed a wild-born first-generation hybrid of a polar bear and a grizzly. Wildlife officials described it as a once-in-a-lifetime event. By 2017, 8 confirmed wild Grolar bears had been documented, including second- and third-generation hybrids. The once-in-a-lifetime event had become a documented pattern with a measurable rate of increase. The cause is the removal of the only barrier that was maintaining species separation: Arctic sea ice. Polar bears are obligate ice hunters. Their entire feeding strategy depends on platforms of frozen ocean from which they ambush ringed seals. As sea ice forms later each autumn and retreats earlier each spring, a trend documented continuously since satellite monitoring began in 1979, polar bears spend progressively more time on land during the season when grizzly bears are most active in the boreal and tundra zones that border the Arctic coast. The two species are closely enough related that the hybrids are fully fertile. The barrier was never chromosomal, it was geographic. And the geography is being systematically removed by a process that is not de-layering. The effects in confirmed specimens document a hybrid that is, by any functional measure, better positioned for the transitional Arctic than either parent. Polar bears are hypercarnivores, near total dependence on ringed seal fat. Accessed through ice platforms that are disappearing, grizzlies are omnivores capable of sustaining themselves on fish, vegetation, terrestrial mammals, and carrion. The Grolar inherits the polar bear's cold tolerance and the grizzly's dietary flexibility simultaneously. In an ecosystem where the conditions that made polar bear specialization viable are being removed faster than natural selection can track, the hybrid carries an adaptive range that evolution did not produce through normal selection pressure. It produced it through the collision of two genomes that the melting ice brought into contact. What the confirmed trajectory of Grolar bear sightings cannot tell us is where the line is between a recurring anomaly and an establishing population. 8 confirmed specimens across 20 years in a habitat covering millions of square kilometers. Sampled by a combination of hunters, researchers, and aerial surveys that collectively cover a fraction of the territory, does not constitute a population census. It constitutes the minimum visible signal from a process whose actual scale has not been measured. The Grolar bear is not the endpoint of what Arctic hybridization will produce as conditions continue to change. It is the first confirmed data point. What the subsequent data points look like is a question the ice loss rate is already answering faster than the research. Infrastructure is positioned to document it. Coywolf, the eastern wolf, was functionally exterminated from the United States by the early 20th century. The bounty programs, poisoning campaigns, and habitat clearance that accomplished that extermination were declared complete. The apex canid niche in the eastern United States was considered vacant. It was vacant for approximately 40 years. Then the Coywolf arrived, and it has not stopped arriving since. 6 million Coywolves now occupy every major urban and suburban corridor from Boston to Atlanta. The cause of their existence is the direct product of the eradication's success. As wolf populations collapsed, coyotes expanding eastward into vacated wolf range encountered the last eastern wolf populations in southern Canada. The geographic and demographic barrier that had maintained species separation for 800,000 years, not biological incompatibility, but range separation and population density dissolved, as both were degraded simultaneously. The resulting hybrids carried coyote adaptability, wolfpack social structure, and domestic dog behavioral plasticity in proportions that vary by individual but combine into a single functional profile. An apex predator specifically adapted to human-modified landscape. The effects are documented in the behavior of an animal that treats human infrastructure as habitat rather than obstacle. Coywolf's den under Chicago Expressway overpasses. They hunt deer in coordinated packs in suburban New Jersey using social organization that coyotes do not possess, and wolves no longer have the population density to perform. They have been confirmed in Central Park. They travel highway corridors at night with documented route fidelity, returning to the same paths on the same schedules across seasons. Wildlife managers in every northeastern city with a significant green corridor have developed Coywolf management protocols. None of them reduce the population. The Coywolf reproduces faster than removal programs operate, adapts to deterrence methods faster than new ones are developed, and occupies a niche urban apex predator that no existing management framework was designed to address because the niche did not exist before the animal that fills it was accidentally created. The wolf eradication program cleared the eastern United States of its original apex canid and produced within 2 generations a replacement that is larger in total population, wider in range, more behaviorally flexible, and structurally more resistant to the management approaches used against it than the animal whose removal made its existence possible. That outcome was not modeled before the eradication began. It has not produced a revision of the management frameworks that created it. The Coywolf continues to expand its range southward and westward at a rate that current monitoring infrastructure is not fully tracking, into ecosystems that have not yet developed the management protocols that the Northeast has been failing to implement effectively for the past 30 years. If you made it this far, you already see the pattern that connects all of them. None of these animals was predicted. Every single one is the result of a system that was supposed to prevent it, a classification, a boundary, a barrier, a management program that stopped working before anyone noticed it had stopped. The biology is not the problem. The biology is just what fills the space that opens up when the systems fail. If you want more of this, not surface facts, not recycled lists, but the actual mechanisms underneath what you think you already know, subscribe. One last thing. The Coywolf has no removal strategy. The Grolar is still being produced. The Narluga skull sat in a drawer for 28 years before anyone looked at it closely enough to understand what it was. How many more are already out there that no one has looked at yet? That question does not have an answer. Not yet.